You're listening to Creating a Universe, a Love Anarchy podcast hosted by William J. Rogers. On this show, we follow the journey of creatives, artists, and entrepreneurs who are making a name for themselves in the ever-evolving landscape of today's industry. Featuring an insight into both Love Anarchy and the Labaniverse music universe, as well as the individual projects and stories of each of our guests, from the music industry and beyond. So whether you're a budding creative or simply interested in what goes on behind the scenes, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Creating a Universe. I'm your host, William J. Rogers, and today I am here with frontman of the Wolven power metal band, Lycanthro, James Delbridge. How's it going, man?
I'm great, man. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been, I'm very much looking forward to finally talking to you after us, DMing on Instagram about anime and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's it, man.
So
yeah,
I'm excited to finally put a face to all the messages about Yu-Gi-Oh and stuff like that. So
nice. Yeah, cool, man. I gotta love that stuff. Yeah, cool. Well, absolute pleasure, man. I've been following you for a while, man. Like the band Lycanthro is awesome. I love what you guys do, but I love you're clearly a really sociable guy as well. I've caught a few episodes of your own podcast talk show type thing, man. So yeah, I really love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much, man. I try. I need to start doing the Wolfpack Live again. It's been a while. It's just because it was very much holidays and stuff like pretty much that. It's end of the year is when everyone just turns everything off. So
totally, man.
Yeah,
I know how it goes for sure. Well, I mean, just to kick things off, then and we can go from there. Would you be able to just give a bit of an overview as to who you are and what you do?
Yes, yeah. So my name is James Delbridge. I am the frontman and one of the guitar players for the Canadian heavy power metal band Lycanthro, which we're not entirely Canadian anymore. I always say we're Canadian based, but we also have some members in the States too. So I guess multinational-ish, I guess.
Nice.
But yeah, no, we play. Yeah, we play sort of old schoolish style power metal with sort of a mixture of Manowar and Blind Guardian mixed with Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, sort of trad metal mixed with power metal and stuff like that.
Nice.
And I also I run Wolfpack Live, the live Instagram show from our Instagram page where I talk to some of our favorite musicians. I also do composing for film, all this other stuff. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Pretty busy guy, right? Yeah. That's cool stuff, man. Really cool. Lots for us to get into. I suppose the main big project, is Lycanthro, right? That's
absolutely.
That's the baby.
Oh yeah. That's the baby. That's the dream,
Cool, man. So let's just talk a bit about Lycanthro then, especially for people that might not have heard of you. You guys, if I'm right in thinking, you had an EP first, and then you've got a full-length album that came out last year, was it?
2021.
Oh, 2021. Oh, yeah, we've just changed
2021 it came out.
Now. Yeah, cool. All right. And then there was a single.
I keep thinking it's 2022 still.
Haven't set the clocks yet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so cool, man. Talk us over those releases and the kind of vibe that you guys have as well. I love that there's a kind of theme with your music, with the wolves and all of that stuff, man. So I'd love to get a bit more of a picture of the concept for the band and your releases.
Sweet. Well, okay, well, in that case, so Lycanthro started when, I'm not actually that old. I'm only 24. So Lycanthro started when I was 18, I think, or 19.
Nice.
It was, so pretty much how the band came to be was when I was in high school, I had the typical, high school band, and we had a really edgy name and stuff like that. We were called Death Wish.
Oh, nice.
And what happened was that, typical when you're a kid, band breaks up, you all end up, you'll end up hating each other. Although I'm on good terms with those old guys now. But but yeah, no, Lycanthro started kind of from the ashes of that band because some of our songs are actually songs that I started writing when Death Wish was a thing. But pretty much, yeah, what happened is after my high school band broke up, when I like just got into college, I put together a new band, and I've always had a huge affinity for wolves, and I've always loved werewolf films and stuff like that, like The Howling and American Werewolf in London, stuff like that. So I thought like that would be a cool sort of image for the band visually, and I always kind of akin it to, because people since have asked us all the time, they're like, "Oh, are you influenced by Powerwolf?" And I'm like, no. I like Powerwolf, don't get me wrong, like, but I didn't discover them until like much later. And then but in terms of our image, it's much more of like, they're like the sort of have like all the religious imagery and all the sort of like very high polished artwork and stuff like that. I wanted to go more for like the grimy kind of sort of, we're still melodic and power metal, but sort of like a grimy street werewolves kind of image, almost like sort of like if like a sabotage kind of image almost. But yeah, so there was that. And then when I put together this new lineup, the first few months we were together, we were still called Death Wish. Right. But then the story of how the name Lycanthro came to be was pretty funny, where when I was in college, there still is a record store in the nearby mall where I live, where I would take the bus to go to college. And cool. And the thing is, the transit system here in Ottawa is absolute horseshit. So can I curse on here, by the way?
Yeah. Speak freely, man.
Okay. Yeah, dog shit. So if I was there and the bus would be like, oh, it's like half an hour or 45 minutes till the bus shows up, I'm like, damn. So I would go and look in the record store. And I remember one day I go there, I'm looking through the metal section, and I see an album, and it's from a British band actually, and they're called Death Wish. And the album was called At the Edge of Damnation. So I naturally bought it. And
cool. Yeah, might as well check it out.
Yeah. And but I looked them up on like Metal Archives, and they were like some old British thrash band from like the late 80s or something. But my first thought was, I found this in an Ottawa record store, so we need to change the name. So so pretty much I had a bunch of different names in mind, but the reason I ended up picking Lycanthro was because I wanted some sort of werewolf kind of name. And I remember I also wanted, and this was a bit of, something that's sort of hard to do nowadays, but I wanted to have a name that no other band in the world had. And I looked and I did extensive research, and there's no other band called Lycanthro. The closest thing I found was there's a punk band that they're called Wolfpack with 2 Ks at the end.
Okay.
And they had an album that was called Lycanthro-Punk, which is supposed to be on a play on words for lycanthropy.
Right.
But yeah, that's the closest thing I found. But
cool, man.
Yeah, so pretty much that's how the name stuck, pretty much, was because I just took the word lycanthrope and then took the PE off the end.
Nice. Yeah. I love it, man. Yeah, it sticks perfectly, man. Really, really cool. And I think that's really great to have. Yeah, the theme, the name, the imagery, especially like the album. You have like the wolf, and the werewolf thing. I mean, I love that because I'm sure, like me, I love the the kind of concepts and characters and themes and stuff like that within a band. And a werewolf on, nothing necessarily comes to mind other than, as you say, like Powerwolf as a name or whatever. But aside from that, to have this kind of werewolf theme and almost like character to it, that seems quite unique to me, man. It's very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No. Go for it, man. Go for it.
Oh, no. I actually had just had a brain fart, so
That's cool, man. That's cool. Well, I just wanted to get into talking about your releases then. So, is the first EP that you've got out, is that the first thing you did, or
no, actually,
Cool.
it's fun because again, we had a little demo that we did when we first started, and that has since been scrubbed from the internet because
Right. Yeah.
it's one of those things of it was really badly produced, and we didn't know anything about recording, and we did it in my dad's friend's basement.
Nice.
And
cool.
and it's funny because 3 of the 4 songs that were on the demo are on Mark of the Wolf, just
Right.
very much much better
more
produced, and we added stuff to it, added parts, better written musically. But the demo we put out, it was just a little thing to we were just young and didn't know very much how the industry
You gotta start
worked
somewhere.
Yeah, so pretty much we did that, and then but then ever since Mark of the Wolf came out, I scrubbed it from the internet just because it's one of those things where I can't listen to it anymore. It's just too embarrassing.
I think a lot of us have one of those. Yeah.
My friend Lindsay Schoolcraft from obviously from Cradle of Filth and all that.
Yeah.
She kind of coined this term that very much described it. She calls it musical puberty, where it's like, I
love that.
It's your first release or 2, if you're in a band, usually is awful. It's like even if the songs are not bad, the production usually will because you're kids and you don't have any money, so you're just like, man, I can get my buddy Johnny to mix it for free. It's like one of those sorts of things, and then you're not actually thinking about, I need to get nowadays I'm like, no, you need to get a pro to do this and that and pay them and stuff like that. So
yeah, cool, man. So when do you remember roughly when you released that demo then?
When we did the demo was it was 2017, I think. Yeah, right. It was early. It was it was towards the end of 2017 we did we think we did the demo.
Cool.
And then then we pretty much just did the typical thing of we didn't even have it on Spotify because we were kids and we didn't even know how to get on. It was one of those things, where it's when you're a kid, all these things are sort of normal to us now, is mind blowing. Man, I wish I could get my stuff on Spotify. It's really easy. But it was on Bandcamp. That was it. That was our demo was on Bandcamp, and we didn't even have an Instagram yet. I think we just had just a Facebook page. But it's just kids figuring stuff out.
Yeah, but, so very much like a local band at this stage, and you guys are really young as well. And were you playing gigs at this time?
Oh yeah, that was our main thing. That's one of the things that we've sort of stepped back from since. Which again, it's not out of the fact that I don't want to. It's just circumstances. But we were very much a live band before the pandemic because we were playing lots of shows here in Ottawa and out of town. We would play a lot in Toronto and sometimes in Montreal if we could get a show there, because it's difficult for a band from Ontario to get a show in Montreal because they very much value their own scene of the metal, the Quebecois metal stuff, which I get, I understand.
Yeah.
But we got a lot of good opportunities here in town to play with a bunch of, bigger bands to get in front of a bigger audience because, and again, at least before the pandemic, we used to actually get some really decent tours through here. And since we were sort of the only power metal or melodic metal band in town, we always got to play with them. We've gotten to play with, at least before the EP came out, we got to play with Diamond Head and a few others of that nature. We got to open for some bigger bands later, but it's some of the classic stuff Diamond Head and Blaze Bailey. Blaze Bailey was our very first big
cool,
show, was opening for him. So we got to we were very much like established ourselves as sort of like the local power metal band that played with like that opened like the big ish like club shows of like some of the bigger melodic bands touring through. So
nice. Yeah, that's really cool, man. Yeah, it's a cool place to be. There is a lot of great bands though in that kind of sort of Ontario scene, as it were, right?
Oh yeah, there is. There's like the thing I find funny because it depends on the city. Like there's lots of great bands in Toronto, obviously. But yeah, there's a lot of great bands, musicians scattered all throughout Ontario. It's just unfortunately because of the pandemic again, the Ottawa scene isn't what it used to be, unfortunately. So, but we used to have a lot of really great bands here too. So
yeah. I mean, I'm sure that's probably the case worldwide, as you say. It was quite.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, quite a climactic event. Yeah, cool. So okay, so what changed then from if you were doing that in 2017 and made the demo? What changed to evolve you guys to making like a properly produced EP the next year?
Yeah, well, what happened was it was because I went to recording school actually, like very shortly after the demo was made. It was the demo was actually made like a while after I graduated high school and I was starting college, and I went to college for music and specifically recording. And then I remember making a joke saying like, man, I've only been here a week and I've already learned more of how to record things than we did in the fucking demo, you know?
Yeah.
So pretty much the whole idea with the EP kind of stemmed from me going to recording school and learning all these things and like the ins and outs of recording and stuff like that. But even then the EP still like didn't go up to that level of professional recording that we would have liked, because again we were still figuring stuff out. But that one, the EP was very ambitious for a band of our size, because when we put it out, it was very much our old guitar player, our very first one that we had aside from me. He had this idea of like having like a song based on the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and I'm just like and I made the joke, I'm like, Metallica already did it, but I came up with the idea of why not a whole release and have it be like a pseudo concept album or EP, even though there's not really any interweaving story, but it was like each song would be 4 songs and each song would be based on the different horsemen. And we thought that was a cool idea, so we ran with it. But what I mean by it being really overly ambitious is because for a small band just starting out, I think 3 of the 4 songs on the EP go over the 7-minute mark, which is nuts. So
I mean, one of them is fantastic. Hold on, let me double check. Pale Rider, the last
Pale
track.
Rider, yeah.
That's 13 minutes 45. I love that track. I thought it was awesome.
Thanks, man. I'm very proud of that one. That's a song. Pale Rider is a song that eventually I want us to do maybe like a re-release or a remaster or re-recording of some of these Mark of the Wolf.
It's a great song, man. Such an adventure.
Yeah, like some of those songs, like I'm very proud of them. I'm surprised that I wrote at that age. And so we figured I figured at some point in the future, as like a bonus track or a special single or something to put out, like we'll re-record some of those songs with the new lineup and give it the production that it deserves,
Yeah, so you're literally like, what, 19, 20 at this point or something?
Yeah, I mean, now or at
then.
point? Oh,
then at that point, sorry.
Yeah, I was like...
You said you're 24 now. Yeah.
I was like 2020. I was like 2021, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. Yeah, it's cool. It's a good effort. All right. Well, talk me through the production process then. You said you were learning how to do it. Did you record it all yourself? Did you mix it yourself? What was that like?
We tried to at first, but then but the thing was, it was because again, since we were cheap, since we were kids, we were like, because when I was in school, we had like a certain amount each semester of free recording time in the studio, but we were expected to use it for our assignments, right?
Right.
So, but I was like, nope, we're using it for our. Well, I handed in demos of our songs as the assignments. Believe
That's
it or
how
not.
to do it. Yeah.
So we pretty much demoed it there, but when we recorded it, we went to one of my professors actually had his own studio, and obviously because we're called Lycanthro, we have to go to this place. It was called Wolf Lake Studios.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
And we thought it was cool because it was this studio that was literally in a log cabin in the middle of nowhere.
Oh man.
Like
Yeah,
it's on the Quebec side, and it's up in the Quebec mountains. And when you drive, and it's this really cool road trip, and whenever you drive up there, you know, it's like this cabin in the middle of nowhere. And in the basement, there's like this full-on like professional recording studio.
Damn.
And what we did was we all pooled money together, and we did this thing they did called the weekend special, where we would be there for 3 days and we like sleep over in the studio too.
Sweet.
So we were there from like the beginning. We were there from like Friday afternoon to like Sunday evening. You know, and we was just straight recording the whole time.
The whole EP.
So that's when we did. That's what we did. Four Horsemen was when we were in the studio for that.
Wow.
And
cool.
yeah, and Mike obviously was Mike Bond was my old professor, and he's great. He's a local guy here in Ottawa, and he's fantastic. And so yeah, so that's kind of was our first exposure to like sort of a professional recording environment. That
sounds like an awesome experience, man. Like really,
it
cool.
was.
I love that.
It was, but it was also very uncomfortable because where we had to sleep was we had to sleep on the live room floor with the drum set still set up and stuff like that.
Oh wow!
And I remember I barely got any sleep, so.
Yeah.
And I also had vivid memories of like, because the way the studio was is that when you walk downstairs, there was like sort of a common room that wasn't at all like put together at all. And it had like a fridge and a microwave and stuff like that. And then there were two separate doors on the right and the left side. And the one on the right went into the control room, and the one on the left was to the live room. And since it's in the middle of the country, I have vivid memories of, you know, getting up before everybody else because I didn't sleep at all, and then eating like microwave breakfast in this sort of common area. And then since we were in the country, I very much remember seeing like there was where I was sitting, and I have my laptop there watching YouTube or whatever, and there was a little shelf in front of me, and I just vividly remember a mouse popping its head out of the shelf, eyeing my breakfast, and then I look at it, I go, no, and then I'm like, no, that's mine, and he then runs away.
Oh man. Yeah, okay, yeah. So that kind of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as well, I guess you probably would have recorded your vocals on like the last day or something. So if you hadn't been sleeping and all that, that must have been a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. That was the tough part with it was recording the vocals without having any sleep, because I'm someone that I don't like do well if it's like if it's like on a hard floor or something like that. I can't do it.
Yeah, yeah, there's got to be a challenge. I mean, fair play for them running the weekend special, but yeah, it would have been great if they at least had some mats or something, some blow-up beds.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, it's cool, man. So, I wanted to ask actually, in Pale Rider, are you singing all the vocals, or is there another vocalist there?
No, that we had a guest vocalist on there because because one of the things we found out was so, you know, if we live in Ottawa, sort of the hometown heroes of metal are Exciter,
right?
And
cool.
they're like the big band from Ottawa. And when we were at a show, we played a show. It was opening for Flotsam and Jetsam, actually, I think.
Cool.
And we saw this guy come up to us, this bald dude, and he goes, "Hey guys, that was a great show, blah blah." And I'm like, "You look really familiar." And it turns out it was Jacques Belanger, who he was one of the Exciter vocalists.
Nice.
And so
that's awesome.
I asked him if he wanted to do this song with us, and he said yes. So that's kind of how that turn came out. So he did sort of like some guest vocals on there, and we thought it was cool because we looked up to Exciter a lot. So
Yeah, that's wicked, man. It came out great, man. I love the dynamic his voice brought. Yeah, it was really cool. All right, so then 2018 to 2021, obviously that's where we had some big changes going on in the world. What was the journey for you guys as a band between the EP and then moving towards the album? And yeah.
Right. Yeah, well, the thing was it was very much like sort of doing the thing of like, as I said, we were still like trying to get a little bit more savvy with social media, and we were playing more and more places like we got to open for some bigger bands here. Like we got to play with like Unleash the Archers and Battle Beast and Hammerfall too, which was really crazy. And like obviously just playing as much as we could here and in Toronto and wherever. We got to like play in some weird places like Newfoundland or whatever. But yeah, no, but like it was very much like we were kind of not taking our time, but like the first actual album was still being written over this time, so we recorded it. We went back to Wolf Lake to record at least the instrumentals, and we did that like and then me learning my lesson from last time, I didn't actually do the vocals that weekend. So what I did was I came back to the studio on my own after I'd actually had sleep in my own bed and went for like a day just to record the vocals while I was, in a good way. So, but yeah, no, it was, it was very much, again, just us sort of figuring stuff out. Like, ironically, I forgot something, but between the album and the EP and the album, we also got signed to a label, which we were surprised about. Like, not a big one, but it was still we got signed to, and we're still with them. They're called Alone Records. They're a record label out of Greece. And they mainly specialize in like melodic metal and power metal and stuff like that. And we were all like shocked because we were like, man, someone in Greece knows us, and then he said, hey, like I want to put this guy's like, I want to put your guys' stuff out on my label. And he gave us, and originally we thought it was a scam, I was like, nah, this is too good to be true. We're, but then I remember he sent me a contract and I sent it to like some people who I knew who were sort of more music industry savvy, and they looked at it and they're like, no, this is legit. I'm like, oh shit. So so we sort of signed a little deal with them, and it's been really good. It's just very much, even though it's a label, it's much more of a distribution deal more than anything, because pretty much what it is that like they make the stock of like the CDs and some of the merch or whatever, and then they send it to us. We essentially get them for free, which is great. So
yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
But yeah, nice. But it's interesting because ironically, despite the fact we were very much a live band, things didn't really start happening until the pandemic, which is, in hindsight is a weird thing to think about, but
I see. Because you went more online.
Yeah, well, it's because I think we kind of had to, because originally, like, we were posting to social media like pretty sparingly, which we shouldn't have been doing. Knowing what I know now, is we only really posted to social media when we had another show or we had some announcement or whatever. But I remember during the pandemic, there was like a sort of a 6-month period where like of the first like 6 months or so, and again, like everybody, where it was just, I was just extremely depressed and I didn't even barely went on social media, and I just sat around, just, playing video games and watching anime and stuff like that. But, but then what happened was after 6 months, I sort of snapped out of it. I'm like, okay, I need to start adapting and getting back into this. My friend, Gaia, Guarda from the band Uriel. She's another.
Mhm.
She's from Montreal. She's a good friend of ours. I saw what she was doing because she was doing sort of the same thing where she was starting her own little like a solo career, and she was putting out a solo album that wasn't metal at all. It was like more like dark wave almost.
Mhm.
And I see what she was doing, and then no, you know what it was? You know what it was? And this is actually funny tying into like the whole doing the Wolfpack live thing.
Mhm.
Is she started doing that idea first before me
Right.
actually. She didn't do it for long, but like the whole live stream chat thing.
Mhm.
And I was one of the first guests she had on there. And that experience was sort of like my sort of little push to start doing stuff on social media more. But it
Mhm.
was very much like an uphill battle of like, you know, oh, you haven't posted in like 6 months, so the algorithm is like is
it's dead.
gonna show you like nobody, right? So but yeah, no, it was very much a process during the pandemic of you know, doing that stuff more and more, finishing Mark of the Wolf, because Mark of the Wolf, but by the time the pandemic hit, we only had the instrumentals done. You know,
Mhm.
vocals I didn't
Okay.
actually get to do. So
Right.
so it was pretty much just learning from a bunch of different people who I met online and stuff like that, and just starting to develop us as a presence online.
Mhm.
And yeah, just sort of learning the trade that way. And then I've actually found that now in this post-pandemic, post-restrictions world that we're in right now, that's helped us a lot more, I find, than just
Yeah, I
playing
bet.
all these shows, stuff like that. That's why now I'm very much an advocate of, hey, like if you want to make it to like the next level, then like play shows, but like only do the ones that are worth it, you know, like
Yeah.
in terms, like only do the ones that you think, okay, will this further our career, you know?
Mhm.
Like if you're gonna play, like if you get like an opportunity to tour or open for a
Mhm.
big band or whatever, you know, I pretty
Sure.
much like decided to get very much more picky with what kind of stuff we would do,
Mhm.
you know, just because I figured, hey, we've had all this success online, then, you know, it'll be good to just in the again in the world we live in now, it'll be good to sort of keep that going and try and learn the ins and outs of how things work online, because I still am.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
just, you know, just so furthering ourselves that way.
Yeah. That's really good, man. I mean, it all takes a lot, right? Like playing shows, it takes a lot of resources, man, and you've got to be
Oh yeah.
practicing all the time. Like, yeah, I can relate, man, because you know I'm a similar age to you, a few years older, and I used to play local gigs as well all the time. And I just thought originally, like you probably, like that's how you do it, right? That's the old school way. You know, you get in a
Yeah.
room and rehearse all the time, and you play as many gigs as you can. But yeah,
Yeah.
man, it's a lot of work, and you don't necessarily get that back in return, you know.
Oh yeah. Like it's very much like very strenuous, you know? Like
Mm-hmm.
I even remember like which not to say like it was a bad thing. Like I met a lot of the touring bands that we got to play with and open
Mm-hmm.
for. I still have friends from
Yeah, that's great.
those since, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the amount that we were doing is very much like,
Yeah, counterproductive.
you know, it wasn't like,
yeah.
I remember there were many shows where I did where like I wasn't at my best and I was like, you know, sick, or my voice wasn't great, you know, like I was like not like, you know, I was like sick or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, so it's like one of those things where in the grand scheme of things, you know, it's like they're a good way to kind of get your name out there when you're first starting out like locally, but
Mm-hmm.
like eventually you got to get to the point where you have to, you know, pick your battles very carefully, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I suppose that's the thing. Like, I guess you managed to kind of get yourself in a cool place where you can support bands coming into your area, but like, um, but it's a whole other thing to get to the stage where you can be going out to other places around the world, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly. And
building a
that's,
presence online is kind of what enables you to do that these days.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say have been like lessons and things that you found from your experience of learning about doing stuff online? As in, like, if there are any other musicians and things like that that are listening to this, what would your best advice be?
Well, one of the best lessons I've learned in terms of that is just don't be afraid to reach out, and that just goes for anybody. And what I mean by that is that, like, you know, we're all in a genre that, you know, most people are pretty chill, you know, despite what the mainstream people think about heavy metal. You know, it's one of those genres where one of those genres where, like, most the people in it, depending on the subgenre, are very nice, you know, very welcoming and accommodating. And some of these lessons are, like, you know, stuff that I learned where it's like, don't be afraid to reach out and just be a kind person, treat the people you talk to sort of like, you know, not just a musician or a fellow musician, but like as someone you'd be like a friend or you'd go and have a drink with, because that has helped us a lot with getting connections that I never would have thought. Like doing, like, as I said, doing the Wolfpack Live thing, some of the guests that I got, I never thought I would have been able to get. You know, it very much was a case of, like, you know, a lot of these people, even bigger names, if you just reach out to them on social media and you're nice about it, and you like, you know, compliment them, or you're not being, if you're, as long as you're not being like a crazy fanboy or whatever, you know, a lot of them were like, one of the main lessons is it's very surprising how many people are willing to help out no matter what level they're at. You know what I mean? So it's like, I find that more bands should, like, you know, try and create a community around themselves, you know, like, and create like a good network. So like in the future, you know, if you befriend the right person, then that could lead to the right opportunity for you, you know? So that's sort of what, that's sort of been my main takeaway from doing this stuff online. And I'm not even just talking about like big names in terms of musicians, but also like industry people too. Like, I remember the people who we currently do our PR with.
The C Squared.
C Squared.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, no, I literally met them again through my friend Gaia, because they were they did her PR. And they had me on their podcast and they did all this stuff. And I later found out that, like, one of them works for Metal Injection. And I'm just like, what? And then I even remember, like, just because, like, obviously because, you know, we struck up a friendship. Her name's Corey, really, really lovely lady. She messaged me when we were going to promote Mark of the Wolf. The first single comes out, and literally the next day she's like, "Hey, by the way, I got you guys a Metal Injection." I'm like, "What?"
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And then she's like, "Yeah, I just did a little write up about you guys, and they published it." I'm like, "Excuse me?" So like,
fantastic,
very, very much. It's just like, I as I said, the main takeaway is, like, don't be afraid to reach out to different people and see what different people are about, whether they be someone who is an industry person or someone you look up to or whoever, you know, but within reason, though. Within reason. Like, I highly doubt Bruce Dickinson would respond to a DM of mine. So
I don't know how many DMs Bruce is responding to be fair. So
that's what I'm sure. Here's the thing. I'm sure, like, those big guys, I don't think they respond to any. I think it's just like, I don't even think, I think half of them don't even have social media.
I wouldn't be surprised. Well,
it's because a lot of them are like old school, and a lot of them are old school, and they're very just like, oh, let the youngins deal with that.
Bruce Dickinson, he certainly seems like that kind of guy.
Oh yeah, no, like I love Bruce Dickinson, but like very much he seems very much like, you know,
old
still
school.
like in the old school mentality, and he's like, you know,
100%,
But and even then, like, just from reaching out, like, in terms of some of the people I've gotten to talk to and befriend, you know, like, one of my favorite bands is Blind Guardian, and I had their old drummer on the show, Toman the Omen, and we're like good buddies now, and we talk all the time and stuff like that.
Cool,
so
it's surreal, isn't it, when that happens?
Yeah, it's true. And it's Yeah, and I'm not going to say who, but one of the people who I've had on the show is actually like doing guest vocals on the next release, and this is someone who I'm just like, ugh, like I'm like completely over the moon that this person's even on one of our songs, you know?
Yeah,
so
that's awesome, man. Yeah, that's so exciting, man. Really, really cool.
yeah, so it's been very much like an experience where, yeah, so main takeaways is just, you know, network, obviously, try and find like the relevant people in your niche, whether it be industry people or bigger artists or whatever, to try and connect with and try and strike up, and obviously, and again, also just like try and come up with ways to connect with people. And again, that's something that I'm still learning, you know, because you hear all the time now, you know, everyone's saying, you know, it's like, oh, create content, like it's like sort of like the thing it's like a broken record. But like it's one of those things where it's like that is true, but it's very much in the sense of like you have to try and find what works for you and sort of stick to it and sort of build your community around that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's it. The content is kind of what people know you for, but what really matters is like the real, genuine relationships that you make, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's cool, man. And so, yeah, from what you're saying, like make friends, build community. That's kind of the core of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And another thing, I suppose, that's also very important is that it's not just the fact that you're reaching out to people with, you know, with what you want or, you know, to listen to your music, right? I mean, you are genuinely very supportive of the music scene, it seems.
Yeah, I try. Yeah, like because it's funny because again, like that's one of the things that like I always say, like, you know, not like if you're like reaching out to someone random and being like, hey, listen to my music. It's the thing that we all joke about, right? You know,
yeah, exactly.
I don't know about you. I mean, you probably do because you run a label, but like I still get messages of random people being like, here, listen to my song. And I'm just like, guys, that's not how you do it.
It's the first message. And it's like, you could have at least just said hi first or something, you know?
Yeah, no, like, it's very much one of those things where, you know, you kind of got to just be a person, you know? Like, I find that like the best thing to do in terms of reaching out to somebody new is, you know, just be like, obviously, as I said, don't like fanboy out or anything, but like show them like you're appreciative and just be, and I always find like specific compliments are very much a good thing too. Like I remember like whenever I would reach out to somebody, I'd be like, hey, I loved you in this, or I really love your vocals. I love the way you do this, blah, 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 blah. And usually that's how they can tell you're for real, because they're like, hey, they're actually taking an interest in something that's very specific about me, you know? And it's not, and it's not and it's not in a fake way. Like it's always very true. You know, like I'm a huge nerd when it comes to like metal music and especially vocals too. So it's like, I'll always ask, like, I remember like whenever I'll have these, guests on Alaska, like these really obscure questions that people that they're like weren't expecting, like hey, remember that band that you were in for like one like album like 30 years ago? And they're like, oh, I forgot about that. You know what I mean? It's like special like that, you know.
It's the genuine passion, as you say. It's like you have to be authentic with it. You can't. I guess that's the thing.
Like you have to care. Obviously, like I know, it's, you know what? It's the best way I can describe what it means by that. And even though this is a much bigger band than us, but there was an interview I saw years ago with Blackie Lawless from Wasp.
Oh, nice.
And he was talking about when they were putting out Crimson Idol, which ironically is the shirt I'm wearing.
Cool, man.
And he said he wrote this, and this sort of applies to what we're talking about, because he wrote a story about how he kept getting fans saying to him, like, hey, I want to do what you do. What advice would you give me? And he says, well, you really got to want it. And they're like, yeah, I want it. He goes, no, you don't understand. Like, you need to like, and he's right. You know, like you can't just be like, it's mainly you have to be smart about it. You know, it's very, it's not like, oh, if I keep recording and putting stuff out, and eventually someone will notice. No, you have to, like, in an industry now where it's like there's so much noise, you kind of have to do a lot of the work yourself in terms of like reaching out to people and stuff like that. Like I've always, one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten in my life was from my old English teacher when I was in high school, because he was a musician too, and he was one of the very early supporters of us, and he always gave me the advice of, you know, create your own opportunities. You know, don't wait around for people to give you opportunities, because you know, it might happen once or twice, but it rarely does. And he's right, you know, like it's you have to be sort of smart with if you want to achieve something that you want, you can't just wait around for it. You gotta like try and figure out what avenues you can take to get to it, you know, whether that be like, let's say, for example, like you want to play a certain festival. Well, you have to do your research. You have to find out who the promoter is. You have to find the promoter on social media, message them, but don't right away be like, oh, I want to play your festival. You know, you have to be like, you have to try and like, hey, I love what you do, blah, 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 this and that. And then eventually it could get to the point where they'll think, hey, so-and-so's a cool guy and his band's good. I'll book them. You know, it's very much like you have to do all the legwork in that sort of situation. And I know some people don't like that, but unfortunately that's just how it is nowadays, you know?
Of course. Yeah, of course it is. But it's good. I mean, there's pros and cons, right? And like in terms of old system versus the new system, like it's really a quality of opportunity now. Anybody, like the internet allows any of us from anywhere in the world to do this. But yeah, you gotta have a lot of initiative to be able to cut through that noise, right? That's kind
absolutely.
of the game now. Yeah. Really cool, man. Yeah, really cool. I love hearing your thoughts on that, man. And in terms of how you're going about it, is it primarily Instagram you're using, and what tends to be your kind of way of networking and whatnot?
Yeah, well, I find that like obviously like Instagram is like sort of the main platform that we focus on, and Facebook too, but like all the other platforms I'm still learning. Like
the TikTok.
I'm still like, for example, like we just made a Twitch, and I'm still trying to learn how that works, because like I've done a couple streams, but I'm still like, a lot of that stuff is still kind of gibberish to me. Like whenever I watch someone who I like on Twitch, like a fellow musician, whether it be like I watch like Adrian Cowan from Seven Spires and Vicky from The Agonist, you know, when I watch or Grant from Unleash the Archers, whenever I watch their channels, I'm always seeing like, oh, gift subs, hype trains, raid, that. And I have like no fucking idea what any of that means, you know? I'm like, oh, like almost every time I get on one of these streams, someone there, it's like, oh, you have been given a gift sub by this person. I'm like, great. What does that mean?
What? Man, so I still haven't really used Twitch at all, but I just went on it one time. I remember the first time I ever even went there, and it was Elf Pirate. He like put.
Oh yeah, I love Elf Pirate.
Really cool guy.
Yeah,
man.
I love him. Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
Really cool guy, and he put like one of our songs on there. He was going to feature it in the show, so we're like, oh yeah, we'll tune in for that episode. And exactly as you said, man, I'm just watching it. I'm like, look, this is great, but like. Yeah, I have no idea what's going on. All of this stuff, all of this hype train stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, wow, this is alien to me, man.
And Aradell's such a good guy. I love that.
Really
dude.
Cool. Yeah. Really cool guy.
Wait, one of your songs, like what? So like, he played one of your songs on his power metal show.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, but I'm a little bit of a like behind the curtain kind of guy, so I have a few different projects and stuff under different names. So this particular one was by Project Yarima, which is with my wife, and it's kind of like folky power metal. It's like very, very melodic metal, kind of almost like soft metal, but it's like with Japanese instruments, like traditional instruments and stuff.
Oh boy, I love that. I'm sure obviously you know this from us talking, but one thing you'll come to know about me is I'm a huge weeb, so I love anything like that.
Nice. Yeah.
So
cool,
it's like
man.
not even just like as we were talking about like anime and stuff, but like Japanese metal and stuff like that. gigantic.
I've
fan
seen
of.
you sharing like so many Japanese metal bands, and so many of them are like ones I've never even heard of, and I'm like, wow, I really need to check these guys out, man.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where, you know, I find that like a lot of those bands, just because Japan is such a closed off, you know, from like it's very much
so
like
cool, isn't it? Yeah.
culturally, it's very closed off from the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So like, whenever I discover some of these bands like that, I'm literally thinking of like, you know, people nowadays always going about how like, oh, nothing's original anymore, this, that, blah, blah. But I'm like, yeah, it is. You're looking in the wrong place. Like some of the stuff that they're putting out in Japan is nuts, you know? Like you got like, like you got bands like Gashirik Spin, who they're a metal band, yet they mix like metal with like idol pop and and even some funk with like the slap bass, but they also have harsh vocals too. Like it's this like, you know, that's why like a lot of those bands appeal to me, but just because it's like it's stuff I haven't heard before, you know?
Man, they have some wild music there for sure.
Yeah.
Man.
So
really cool.
Yeah, no, so like as I said, whenever like I always try and maybe not so much in our sound, but like I'm very much inspired by like that kind of those kinds of bands like X Japan and Anthem and Love Bites and Mary's Blood and stuff like that. I love all those bands. But and not even just like the music, but one thing that I find very interesting about that whole scene is how they promote music. Like because it's very different from here. Like that's one thing that's been I found really interesting about that whole scene is that.
What would be your main observations then about the differences? Yeah,
well, few things. They're very much a country where their music industry is still in the 1980s, and I mean that in a good way, like not like the very predatory way like it was like back in the day, right? With like the record labels. But what I mean by like it's still in the 1980s where I've seen photos of people still line up outside CD stores whenever a band they like's album comes out. There are bands that you know, physical product is still very important there. Like almost it's one of the few places where I think it's more important than streams, because if you go to any Japanese band on Spotify, they almost have like okay, let me just say it like this. If you go on like Gashirik Spins, just as the same example I used, if you go on their Spotify, they only have like 10,000 monthly listeners for a band which again seems like a lot, but for a band their size is not. But if you see videos of them, they're playing to like thousands and thousands of people every night, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
So I found that like some platforms like Spotify don't really matter there. Like people don't use it, you know, which is odd. They're very much still about the physical media there. They're very much about YouTube. Like you'll see all these Japanese bands putting out like YouTube content and like really high quality too, with like high quality production. And I'm just like, man, how the hell are they able to afford all this stuff? The other thing I've found too there is it's one of the few countries where if your band is successful enough, you can make a living off of music there. Like it's actually like I know like there are people who I've seen from bands in Japan where that's what they do. That's how they make money, is being a musician in a band, which over here, unfortunately, is something that's almost like an impossibility nowadays, because in North America or Europe, even the really big bands, that's not their main thing, unfortunately, you know?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like it's either a part-time thing, or like if you really want to make money, you kind of have to do it through being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, really. Exactly. Like that's why you're seeing all these big bands have like members in multiple projects and them having side hustles and stuff like that. It's because of that. It's because unfortunately it's not enough anymore to do that. Like for example, like you'll see people like I don't know, like trying to think off the top of my head, like Thomas from Nightwish, you know, one of the biggest metal bands in the world, and he has like two different side projects along with it, you know, or you'll have this person just came to mind because I like just saw her on Instagram before we came on this call. Was like Diane von Earsberg from Ex Libris. She has like the jewelry thing, you know, and she's always advertising that. And I'm just like, and you know, I find that nowadays, like, us musicians have to get creative with how we make our living. You know, we're all creative minds after all. But it's very much in the sense of like, just being a musician is like, and in a band and releasing stuff is not enough anymore. But ironically, in Japan, that's exactly how it is. Because again, as I said, since there's such an emphasis on a physical product there, or at least from what I've seen, a lot of these bands are full-time musicians, or like some of these people in these bands are full-time musicians, which is crazy.
Awesome. It's awesome, isn't it? Yeah. And as you say, I have seen like videos of live shows in Japan with Japanese bands and stuff as well. And as you said, like bands that like many people I've never even heard of in this part of the world, but they're playing to like huge crowds, man.
Yeah, like the main one that I always say, which this is a band that they're like starting to get more and more known outside Japan, but then there's like, because of like a lot of documentaries on them and stuff, was X Japan, which they're one of my favorite bands.
Cool. Yeah.
And they weren't even like, I don't even think they played their first show outside of Japan until like the early to mid 2000s. And they've been around since like the early 80s. Yeah. And they're filling up like soccer stadiums there and stuff like that.
Wow.
Like,
well, why do they need to leave Japan?
I know, but I think it's just like, it's one of those odd things where like, I remember seeing when I was in college, X Japan playing their very first, you know, you being from the UK, they played their first ever UK show, and that was in 2018. And they've been out. God. And they've been around since the early 80s, you know?
Yeah, 30, 40 years by that point. Wow.
But it's been really nice to see a lot of those bands like getting like sort of more known outside of Japan, because like X Japan, when they played in England, from what I heard, they sold out. It was Wembley Arena, and they sold it out. Which I know is like smaller than Wembley Stadium, but still.
Yeah, stadium is like ridiculously big.
Yeah,
but
that's
arena,
like that's Queen levels, obviously. So
yeah. But arena is still a big venue. It's about 12, 13,000 people.
Yeah, and they filled it up from what I heard, which is nuts.
Yeah, wicked, man. That's cool. Yeah, that's really good. X Japan is a really cool band that like I've liked everything that I've heard, but I really need to like delve into more.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, really cool, man. Do you know Wagaki Band?
Do I know who?
There's a Japanese band called Wagaki Band. And
no, I haven't heard of that one actually.
The reason I really like them is because that's kind of their thing, is they play traditional Japanese instruments like mixed with metal. So they've got, I don't know how many band members, like a whole load of them. So they have like the metal dudes, you know, but then they've got like a chick that plays shamisen. Do you know what shamisen is? Kind of almost like a banjo type thing. Yeah, and then there's like a koto, and like they have like dude that comes in playing different like flutes and things like that. But then they're also playing metal. It's really, really good, man.
That's
that was
really
kind
cool.
Of probably like the main reference really for that kind of fusion that we tried.
So it's sort of like a Japanese like Elevati almost ish.
Yeah. I would say as like a elevator pitch. That's a good way to put it. For sure.
Sick.
They even did like there's a video that's got a fair amount of hits on it where I think Evanescence must have been in Japan, and so they must have like done a show together or something, but like Amy Lee actually came on stage with them and they did a cover of Bring Me to Life, but it was kind of like Japanese Bring Me to Life.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah,
that's
check
really
it out,
cool.
man.
I like that a lot. That's really sick.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, I mean, I guess whilst we're on the topic, because I was thinking, I was listening to all your stuff earlier, and I even went after listening to all your releases, even went onto the playlist of your influences.
Oh, sweet.
and I was playing through that. Obviously, loads of stuff that I'm familiar with, but yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I feel like my favorite part of it was when it went from Megadeth to Roxette.
Yes.
And I was like, nice. Yeah, that's a good mix. So man, like perhaps we could talk a little bit more then about like who your kind of biggest influences are and your favorite music and stuff.
I'm so glad you brought up Roxette.
I
That's
love
actually
it, man.
that's sort of like there's a story behind that, because
Cool.
the reason why I put them on there is because uh when I was younger, like I always say that there were certain bands that made me want to become a musician, and there were certain bands that made me want to play metal. And
Nice.
before I even knew what metal was, my 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 dad in the house used to play like Queen, obviously,
Nice,
and my dad was very much into Europop, you know, like because he's from my dad's from England, and he grew up around all those sort of artists, you know, like some of the ones that he likes are people like Judy Zook and stuff like that. But
Nice,
but he played Roxette, and I thought when I was a kid, I thought Per Gessle was like the coolest fucking guy on the planet, and I still think to this day I still think he is. And so like Queen and Roxette were the two bands that made me want to become a musician, pretty much.
Nice.
So and Roxette were like, you know, they're one of those bands that like I know most metalheads do like them, which is cool. And they're one of those bands that they were so like, people don't realize like how much of an impact they had. Like they're one of those bands I'd argue, like I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I don't care. Per Gessle is easily one of the greatest songwriters of all time. Like some of these songs that he wrote, even if people didn't even know who Roxette was, everyone knows Listen to Your Heart, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Everyone knows It Must Have Been Love. Mm-hmm. Most people know the look, you know? It's like, so even if they don't know who did it, that's very much
it's just like such perfect like melodic songwriting.
Exactly. Like, and that's it's something that is very much like really cool. And as I said, like I grew up with them, and that's why I always say they're very much a huge influence to me personally. So, and one thing that I've also noticed on social media, which is really cool, is I don't know if he's a metal fan or not, but from what I've seen, Per Gessle actually runs the Roxette Facebook page, and he always shares covers of people doing Roxette songs.
Oh, nice.
Which is really cool. I was like, what? Like the other day he shared like, oh, Lord of the Lost did a Roxette cover on their new album, and he shared it. Wow. I was like, man, that must be like the biggest honor ever, is to get when you get the approval of the original artist. That's like, you know, the biggest honor ever.
Yeah, for sure, man. Would you or have you ever done a Roxette cover? Would you do one?
I'm planning to. Yeah,
man.
Well, because because in our band, me and our keyboard player John are both huge Roxette fans. I don't know about the rest of the band, but me and him are.
I know he's super into the 80s stuff, right?
Yeah, like the AOR stuff. Yeah. And it's funny because like John's into that stuff so much that like he'll even like on our new stuff, he's putting AOR keyboards in our stuff, and it strangely works. I'm not complaining, but I
was interested about that addition to the band. Actually, I guess you have a lot more keyboards in the future material, right?
Yeah. Well, it's mainly just because like we wanted, like the thing with Mark of the Wolf was that whenever again, bit of a side tangent, but
that's cool.
the thing with Mark of the Wolf was like I'm very proud of that album, but the main criticism we got, it's weird because the album did well, and the reviews were all positive. Like it's weird. I didn't read a single negative review of it. The worst thing I read about it, and this is sort of the catalyst for having a keyboard player, was one reviewer wrote, "This music isn't necessarily bad, but I've heard all this before." You know,
right?
And keep in mind, Mark of the Wolf, though, a lot of those songs I wrote when I was much younger. So I was thinking, oh, shit. Well, okay, let's, you know. And I always found that there were certain parts in our songs where, like, if there was a solo section or whatever, I'm like, man, something's missing from here. Like, there's rhythm guitar, but like it's kind of sounds hollow. Like I'm like, I need something else there, you know.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And John's a really good friend of mine. And I've wanted a keyboard player for years. So he was very much the right fit because he had all the
Awesome.
criteria that we wanted. He was someone he's reliable. He's a great musician. He does harsh vocals, which he will be doing on some of our songs.
Wow, cool.
And very professional and stuff like that. Can tour and do all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So great to work with. Really, just all around, absolute gem of a guy.
Nice.
And but yeah, no, and I wanted that in our stuff, because I'm and not even just that, but I'm hearing like sort of the landscape of how power metal is now, and that's pretty. I don't want to say common, but it's pretty much like every band now has sort of like that keyboard element, even though if there's not a keyboard player, and it really fills out the sound of the record.
Yeah, it's just like modern production in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's why, in modern production, you'd be hard pressed to find records that don't have keyboards on it because it just sounds nice, Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you. I guess the older or the stuff you've got, like you do have a lot of roots in more like old school heavy metal, I guess. So, yeah. That's cool. I mean, you do have some keyboards and things. There's some piano sections in the songs, and I think was it the last song, Evangelion. There's like some kind of synthesizers going on.
Yeah. Well, that was sort of the start of it because I wrote those. Like, I don't even play keyboards. Those were just like programmed, I guess. But like, I wanted an actual keyboard player. But but in Evangelion, there was the intro was actually was an actual piano. That was a friend of ours from here in Ottawa who was from a local band from here called the Aphelion, which they're like very proggy, like they're very much like an Opeth-ish kind of sound.
Nice, yeah. Awesome.
And they had their guitar player was also their keyboard player.
Right, cool.
And he played the intro to Evangelion.
Nice.
And so, yeah, like that's something that like, because keep in mind, like, even though I say that, like, oh, keyboard's like a new thing, even though like Mark of the Wolf was done over a long period of time. So like some stuff was added later, some stuff was added earlier, so it was, so yeah, no, it's just something that we've wanted to do for a long time. And it definitely is very beneficial, especially in our genre.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that again, like, it's just part of that, like, creativity is that, like, yeah, there's millions of metal bands or whatever, like all over the world, and you can do the same, it can become derivative, right? But there is all of these different subgenres, and then there's all of this other kind of music that you can blend stuff with, have those themes in. So yeah, I think that's what it's all about, and that's why I always love to see something like that where you have an influence like Megadeth like mixed with Roxette, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I like both of these things equally, and they're both in this mix,
And let me tell you, like, and also like for in the future, like I even have, not for this upcoming release, but like I remember I actually challenged myself to write a poppy metal song,
Awesome.
like sort of like in the style of Roxette, but if they were metal,
Yeah.
And
Cool.
I made myself like a hard cutoff of like, okay, it has to be under 3.5 minutes,
Nice.
stuff like that. So like it's very much like trying like to put all these different influences into our own sound for sure. And even not even just Roxette, but like I always joke with people, well, not joke because like I do legitimately like this band, but like I always say to people, I'm like, yeah, I love Aqua. That's the other one I grew up with.
Europop. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I grew up with it was, again, before I even discovered metal, it was Queen, Roxette, Aqua. Those are the three bands I grew up with. That's what my dad always used to play.
I think everyone just always thinks of Barbie Girl, surely, when
okay, and I'm that one guy. I'm that one guy, which I'm like, they have better songs than Barbie Girl.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I need to listen more. But yeah, it's cool. But that's great. Again, it's just like super melodic music, and that works. I mean, your music is still very melodic, right? It's heavy. It's got all the metal stuff, but ultimately, it is still very melodic, like through and through. So yeah, you can hear that. It makes sense.
Yeah, that's what we try, because like we try and have the perfect balance between melodicness and heaviness, because I find that, like, at least from back when we were playing live a lot, the thing that like the songs like Crucible, for example, which were like really, really of like the heavier songs, those are the ones that people like recepted to the most. So I thought, well, I want to still keep true to what I want to do in terms of the melodic side, to have that happy medium of balancing melodic with heaviness,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Yeah. But as you say, like, yeah, like I think if I'm right, like Roxette were produced by Dennis Pop, right? And that was kind of like the beginning of Sweden taking over the world of music production.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah,
And
because I
even
think then like Max Martin was like his understudy, and he just became like the most successful writer producer. Like that team like writes basically all of the pop songs that are like
oh
number
yeah,
ones
yeah,
and
yeah.
everything.
Wait, Max Martin's
Yeah.
Swedish? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he was like an understudy of Dennis Pop, who was the producer of of
Oh,
Roxette.
oh
I think
really?
I'm
Wow.
pretty I'm pretty sure about that.
Yeah, that's
Hopefully,
pretty.
I'm
That's
right.
sweet. Well, to be
Yeah,
fair,
really
yeah, like
cool.
the Swedes are definitely the best in terms of like that sort of melodic poppy sound. Like hell, like I even
Yeah,
like
totally.
there's even a lot of metal bands now who they kind of draw from that. Like say what you will about this band, because I know this is a band that like it's very much a love him or hate him sort of band. But like I always say, I'm like Amaranth. Amaranth are
Oh
literally
yeah.
just rock set but with heavy guitars, you know?
Yeah, totally, man. That's what I kept thinking when you said about like Roxette as a metal song. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it totally works, and there's plenty of bands kind of doing that. Amaranth
Yeah,
is a great
yeah.
example, I'd say.
Like Amaranth is very much like some of their songs, like especially like some of their more ballady songs. I'm
Hmm.
like, I could totally picture Marie Fredriksson singing this, you know?
Uh-huh.
Like
Yeah.
Elise is very much like cut from the same cloth, I find vocally.
Hmm. So, I mean, are you a fan of ABBA?
Unpopular opinion, not really.
So,
I don't hate
why not?
ABBA. I don't hate ABBA at all. I just was
Uh-huh.
never as much into them, honestly. I
Fair
know
dues,
that's,
fair
that's kind of
dues.
blasphemy because I know a lot of people really like ABBA, but like
No,
no,
it's
no,
mixed.
no hate. Just never really did anything for me.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of almost the generation before that, isn't it? Really.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's fair. You never know. As you say, I guess all of these ones are a bit of a hit and miss. I remember when Gideon sent me the Pirate Queens single
oh yeah,
that from the Woods of Wonders album that they were going to release. And you know how it has like well, obviously the Pirate Queens are all like
yeah,
female, like women singers all like singing together, you know? And so that kind of like big chanty chorus of them all singing together, it like I just couldn't help but think of ABBA. And I said
yeah.
that to Gideon,
Oh,
and he was like, "No, I was not. I'm not into ABBA." I
well,
was like,
it's
"Sorry,
funny
dude."
because that's one of well, first of all, that's one of the best songs on the album. But
I
also,
think so. Yeah, probably my favorite. Yeah,
yeah, it's one of my favorites too.
one of the favorites at
Yeah,
least. There's loads of
yeah.
cool moments, but yeah,
Oh yeah, but like that's that song very much I thought was really cool just because like I'm someone that like don't get me wrong, like Floor Jansen and Simone Simmons and all them. I love those vocals, but like I
yeah,
really love like the kind of vocal technique where it's like when it's like a female vocals, but when they sound like distorted. You know, like really so
yeah.
not growling, but like
I'm
rough
with you.
female vocals. I
Yeah.
really like that sound. So
Yeah.
and like I'd argue that like Laura Gilmon from Burning Witches is probably like at
Yeah.
least in terms of newer bands the best
Mm.
at that, you know?
Yeah.
And then even if you go back to like the old school stuff, like that's how Doro used to sing.
Doro,
That's how
of course,
Leather Leone
yeah.
from Chastain used to sing.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that sound of the really rough chick vocals. You know?
I love when Alyssa from Arch Enemy goes into that part of her voice. Sounds so good as well. Yeah.
Yeah, or like Vicky from The Agonist is another one that does that too. But and I found it cool that the whole song was just three vocalists, and since they're supposed to be pirates, he picked vocalists to have the more rougher sounds. So like on that song, it's such a good, I just personally love that sort of vocal from on a song for sure. And so now it's three women on a song singing like that in this catchy song. It was awesome.
Really catchy, super anthemic chorus, yeah. But it's the fact that they're all singing that unison like that.
Yeah.
We're
the pirate queens. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, epic, man. Yeah, like I obviously you played a really great part in that record as well. A couple of little roles there, and you were a real like advocate for it. I saw you so much like showing up in the like overall promotion of that record and things.
Well, it's just because like I've always like metal operas. Like I'm a huge Avantasia fan. I'm a huge Arion fan.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It's something that I've been seeing pop up more and more in recent years. Like more and more people are doing that sort of thing. Like there's a band from France. They're called Avaland, and they're doing that sort of thing too, and they're doing a really good job. And I remember. This is a perfect example of an opportunity I got because of the live streams.
Right.
Because I had one of the guests I had a while back was Jack from Battleborn, obviously your fellow countryman, and mine too, kind of.
Yeah, you got the heritage.
As I said, I'm part British, and
nice.
And I remember Gideon was in the chat for that, and I remember seeing this Words of Wonder thing. Right, and this is when he only had announced maybe like a quarter of the lineup at that point.
Yeah.
And I remember him reaching out afterwards and said, "Hey, I listened to you and I really liked your stuff." And I said, "Hey, yeah, thanks very much, man." I said, I just kind of threw it out there. I said, "If you have any room for anybody else, I'd love to be a part of it." Nice. And he goes, "Oh, maybe I'll think about it." And then about a week later, he messaged me. And originally I was just going to do the guitar solo. He goes, "Hey, I want you to do a guitar solo on this song." I said, "Hell yeah, sweet." And then about a day later, he's like, "Hey, one of the vocalists dropped out. And I'm just like, "I'm your man." So nice, man. I was very fortunate. I'm very grateful of the involvement with that album because, as I said, I've always wanted to be on something like that.
Yeah.
And I think how it turned out really, really great. As I said, like I didn't do a whole lot of vocals. I would have liked to have done more, but
there were so many people that
exactly.
Yes.
But the thing that I was telling people when I was describing the album is since I'm on that song Elvish Hell, and I remember when he sent me the song, I asked him like, "Hey, like what's the song about? Like what's my character feeling? You know, like what's And then he's like, "Oh, you play this elf named Marwyn who his brother got taken away by the big bad guy, the darkness, and you think he's dead and you're grieving, but you're also like pissed off at everybody, you know?" And so I'm like, "Okay, I can do that." And that's so I remember, and the way I was describing it to people when I was telling them about the album, I said, "Yeah, I play a racist elf because they hate humans, right?" So,
right, I see.
And my character, one of the bits on that song, I actually ad-libbed, and I sent it to Gideon. I said, "Hey, if you don't like it, you don't have to use it." But he listened to it. He goes, "It was the bit." Mike, I decided to make my character still be like the bitter asshole because underneath the last chorus where you hear Gideon and Stefani singing, you know, "We will set you free," and then underneath I did like a sort of offset vocal underneath. And that's why, and it's just me just being like, it's like I'm like, "Your kind aren't welcome here," you know. It's like I made that up. I ad-libbed that, and I said, "Hey, like if you don't like it, don't use it."
Elf.
Yeah, because like even though they're like, "Hey, we'll help you," I'm like, "Yeah, but still, you're human, so fuck you."
Yeah. Nice. I like that.
I'm very I say it was very I'm very happy with how that turned out, and then I'm even more happy with like this solo, you know, for Castle of Wisdom.
Wicked guitar solo,
because like on that song, because I didn't realize it was gonna be the power ballad he was sending me to do the solo for.
So you got to do a meaningful one.
I very much did, like I tried to do sort of like one of my favorite guitarists is Gary Moore.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I did sort of a Gary Moore-ish kind of solo for that. Like that's what I was going for.
Gotta have that blues
and it still blows my mind that the song that I play on is the one that has you know, Alessandro Conti from Twilight Force and Ralph Sheepers from Primal Fear. You know, it's really cool to say that I'm on the same song as them. Yeah. Which is and that album has also been very sort of unifying almost, and I don't unifying, but also like good for networking too, because I've reached out to people who are on that album who I didn't even know, and who like for example, Laura Gilmon from Burning Witches.
Mentioned,
I emailed her because I wanted to have her on my show. And she did, and I said, "Hey, we were on the Woods of Wonder album together,
yeah,
you know."
Connected you, yeah.
Yeah, or a while back, Firewind came to Canada.
Right.
They were opening for Dragon Force, and I saw Herbie.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, we're on the same album, man." He goes, and he's like, "Are we?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I show him the graphic, and he's like, "Oh shit!" So,
cool, man. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been really great. And then like another one, I think Alina Lesnick, I messaged being like, 'cause I didn't even know who she was originally on there. Then she's like, this like YouTube vocalist sensation with these like thousands of subscribers. And I'm just like, oh shit, so
yeah,
it's been a really cool unifying experience being on that album. And then also the thing I always joke about is one of my favorite parts is the very last song, how John plays the darkness.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's so fitting. That's so fitting. And it's funny because at the very end, you know how like he got all of us to do voice acting, right?
Of course.
At the very end, when you hear the darkness talk, it doesn't sound like John. Like I asked him, like, John, did you do that, or did they get someone else to do that? He goes, no, that was me. I'm like, and then so every now and then I'll send him a message and I'll just go, did you really think you could stop me? Me? So it's just
nice.
awesome.
Yeah, it is so fitting, obviously, for him to play that role. I thought that earlier when you said, oh yeah, he's been taken by the bad guy, and I'm like, yeah, isn't that your keyboard player?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, man.
Yeah, man. Overall, that was an amazing experience being on that album, and I hope I can work with Gideon again at some point, because him and Charlene are fantastic. So
yeah, so lovely, man.
Yeah, and it's actually funny because I think they might have done this with like everybody who was involved with the album, but they like now because of that they like send me like Christmas cards and stuff like that.
Oh,
and just very, very great people.
Yeah, man. Yeah, as I say, I mean, I know that you were super kind of active in that, man. So like, yeah, I'm sure that they appreciate that big time. Yeah, really, really nice people. And I know that they want to do a lot more and stuff. So yeah, I suppose we'll see where it goes. And you can campaign for more racist elf. Mowing the racist elf.
Oh my God, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, wicked. And like, have you, or are you planning on being involved in any other kind of collaborative projects like that?
Yeah, well, I've done a few like that. The thing is that one thing that I've always really wanted to do, and I've been lucky enough to have the opportunity to do this a few times, is do guest vocals on people's work, because the things that I've always liked a lot in music are obviously like the collaborative sort of songs. Like you hear it all the time in pop music, like it's like, oh, insert rapper here in like fucking Ariana Grande song or whatever.
Of course.
But it's something that I've been noticing that in metal it's happening more and more.
Definitely.
And it never used to. But I really like it. Like, and not even just with big bands, but like I've seen like, there's a band that I'm friends with. They're from the States. They're called Judicator. And they had Hansi on a song.
Wow,
I was like, what?
awesome.
And then stuff like that. Or I'm trying to think who else is there.
I mean, I feel like
that.
Frontiers is like seems to be just all over that. Like,
yeah.
Not only are they like collaborating everyone together, but they're also making just like whole albums and whole like collab bands.
I was gonna say I feel like Frontiers, that's a different thing, because like what I'm talking about is like obviously like the whole like more like organic collaborations of like a band reaching out to someone that they look up to.
Yeah.
And then be like, hey, we have this song. Do you want to be on it with us? I feel like with Frontiers, it's very much like that's sort of part of their business model, where it's like,
trying to engineer it. Yeah.
let's take a bunch of members from famous bands, and like they're very much about the super groups in that label,
exactly.
which is cool. It's like, and some of them are really cool. Like I remember the very first one they did, and because I remember I was in high school when this came out, was do you remember Sweet and Lynch?
I'm not sure.
So that was, they did a collab album. It was Michael Sweet from Stryper and
Sweet okay.
and George Lynch from Dawkins.
Right.
And that album was, and some of the songs on that album were amazing, you know?
Yeah.
So I think, and that album was so successful that they're like, here, let's do more of those kinds of things, you know?
Yeah. I like the like Alan Lunday ones again, because just two like powerhouse vocalists. I don't know if they were on Frontiers or not, but they probably were, because they were written by Magnus Carlsen as well, who is
Magnus Carlsen, anything is like, you know, even that was the other thing I was gonna say in terms of like rock operas. Like one of my favorite albums of 2021 was Heart Healer, you know?
Yeah, that was a Frontiers one. Yeah.
It
was like all of the Women of Metal album.
Yeah, and it's really good. And I have it on vinyl, and I really liked who he got on it. Like, I remember like Adrian, obviously from Seven Spires, is on it, and Annette Olsen and Nora from Battle Beast and all that. It's such a good album. I remember because all the Seven Spires guys are friends of ours.
Yeah.
And I remember telling Adrian before, I said, like, hey, like that song Awake is like my favorite song you've ever sang on besides the Spire stuff.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Yeah, Spires are such a good band, man. Those guys.
They really are.
so creative, man. Like, when I discovered them, they stood out like a mile. I was checking out some playlists. It might have even been from Frontiers, like stuff that they were releasing, all the different bands, and then that one came up, and like, wow. I just
they were one of those bands that because we were talking much earlier about like, when Lycanthro first started and we were playing live a lot.
Right.
They were one of the few bands that I didn't meet because of online. I met them because they came to Ottawa. Not when they first started, but their first album was out at this point.
Right.
And they were doing it was their first ever like little tour. It was like, and the reason I say little, because it was only like maybe like a week long, and it was like them playing in like the States and then here. And
I guess if they were in Berkeley at that time or whatever.
They must have. They were all in Boston at the time, so it was like, yes, they did like, you know, Boston and New York and all the cities around there, and then they came up here and they did Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, and I discovered them before. I always joke, I'm like, I knew them before they were big, but we opened for them when they came here, and that's how I got to know them, and I remember being blown away by them. Like, they were playing in a room with 12 people, and it was awesome. Man. And I always joke with people being like, I'm like, oh yeah, you saw Spires at Prog Power? Yeah, I saw them in a club in front of 12 people. Those were the shows.
That's it. You'll never know.
But yeah, no, like we've gotten to know them really well, and they're like, I consider them good friends of ours. Like Jack, their guitar player, is one of my really good friends in music. He's our producer ish. Like, he mixes all of our stuff. All the Lycanthro stuff. And
so I sorry, Donor. I knew for sure that he mixed the latest single. Did he mix like the album and even the EP before?
He did the mastering for Mark of the Wolf. Okay. And then he mixed when we put out our Running Wild cover, he mixed that. Right, and now he's mixing the
next stuff,
the new release. Awesome. And he's an absolute joy to work with. And whenever I work with him, I'm always extremely apologetic, because I'm like, I feel like I'm always like, when it comes to like production, I feel like I'm always very like overbearing, but he's very chill and stuff like that. I'm like, bro, I'm really sorry. I don't mean to be like this, you know? He's like, no, man, it's all good. You know, it's like, so like, he's great. They're awesome. Their bass player, Peter, is a fantastic guy. He's their manager too, and he's like very, very knowledgeable. And I've gotten to learn a lot of stuff from him. Adrian, obviously, is, you know, one of the best up and coming vocalists in metal today, period.
Totally.
And absolute sweetheart of a person. Their drummer, I don't know that well, actually, Chris. I don't really. He's very nice from what I've talked to him. I just don't know him as well as I do the other three.
Sure.
But we opened for them when they came here. Like, they've been around longer than us, but like when we like first started, one of our first shows was playing with them, because the local promoter here were like, hey, I got this band coming through here. I've never heard of them. They're called Seven Spires. Do you want to play with them? And I'm like, and I listened to them. And I was like, yes,
Yeah,
yes, they're freaking great. They're fantastic. You know, it was when as I said, it was when their first album had like just come out, I think. So
yeah, wicked. That's fantastic, man. Yeah, so cool, man. So cool. So, when in the music you're producing now, then are you still recording in a local studio and then sending it to Jack to mix, or it's all remote? Yeah, you got members now in the States, and so
yeah.
how's that all work?
I'm glad you brought that up because like that's one of the things I mentioned when it was like, oh, you know, the band sort of evolving, not just sound wise, but like the way we do things.
Yeah.
Because, okay, pretty much long story short, during the pandemic, we had like, and it wasn't just us, it was like many, many bands, especially around here, was we had members quit, you know, we had members quit, we had members, you know, we had to let go of and stuff like that. And for a while, you know, it's the thing is that my main thing is that, okay, sorry, that's a tangent for later. Recording, yes. So because as I said, I went to school for recording. I have my own recording setup here.
Cool.
And pretty much what we've been doing, and I think this is what we're going to keep doing for the foreseeable future, is just home recording, because it's free, it's a lot less stressful, and you can do things at your own pace, you know. Like that's how we're recording this release, is just because it also saves on money too, obviously, and you can put more of the budget into like mixing and stuff like that, and promo or whatever. Because if you know how to record yourself, then you're gonna save so much money, you know. If you're like a vocalist, just get an SM7B, a DAW, and a good interface, and you're good, you know. That's literally all you need. So that's what we've been doing. And pretty much what we've been doing is that like the process now is pretty much everyone records on their own. They send me the tracks, I edit them, and then I send them to Jack for mixing, pretty much. Awesome. And I feel like that's a lot more of a streamlined process than what we had in the past. So
yeah, sleeping on the floor in a
yeah. Well, not even just that. Not even just that, but one thing that it's a funny story about Mark of the Wolf, and this is obviously nobody's fault, but the reason the album took so long was because we got a stroke of bad luck, because our engineer, who had all the tracks and had everything, who was editing everything, he, about right when production ended, he had a kid. He had a kid, and he put everything on hold, and and I'm not joking, we didn't hear from him for like a year.
What? But he just never sent you your work.
Well, he didn't finish. He didn't finish, which again, like, you know, it was very much like again, nobody's fault sort of thing, you know. It's just those things happen sometimes.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah. So one of the things that I sort of took it upon myself since then is, again, no shade to him at all. Our old engineer was great. Sure, but I'm very much an advocate of, if you can do something yourself and do it well, do it, you know? Yeah. And in my case, like I'm like, the reason why we get like Jack, like when it comes to stuff like mixing and mastering, I think you should get someone else to do that. Like you shouldn't do that yourself because you're too biased. But when it comes to like recording and editing, if you know how to do that, do it, because that will save you so much time and so much money. And you can do it at your own pace. You don't have to wait for people, you know? So yeah, no, that's why like now we all record on our own, and then I have like a master session on my computer, and then I import everything into there, and I edit everything. I edit the drums, edit the vocals, all that stuff. And then once that's done, I send it to Jack, and he mixes it.
Yeah.
And Jack also
go on.
Oh, sorry. And Jack also sort of acts as like the producer too, because he very much is very involved in the recording process as well. Like for example, like for the vocals on this upcoming release, me and him would have a call on Zoom or whatever, and I'd have it on my phone propped up against my TV here. And while I'm recording, there's like a software, like a plugin that you could get, where if you enter in like a code, someone else can listen to you while you're recording. So he's hearing me in real time, like with like 0.1% latency, you know? And while I'm doing it, he'll be like, he's like, oh, try this, or, you know, that was sharp, or that was flat, or do that again, or whatever. So he's doing the producer thing too, as well, because he's very good at that. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That was actually what I was about to ask.
Really?
I was going to say that, so it seemed as if maybe you were really kind of like the producer and Jack was the mixer, but then as you've said, like Jack is actually really involved as a producer as well.
Oh yeah, like I'd say the thing with me is that like I consider him more like me. I was in the band. I consider myself more like the writer, since I write 99% of the songs, but I don't trust myself with producing our own stuff because I'm very one of the things I've learned doing this is that you need second opinions and third opinions. You need to ask everyone who like is in a bit of a higher, like a more experienced position than you.
Yeah.
You should ask them their thoughts always, because I find that like I don't trust myself with that kind of thing, because like I'm very biased, you know, so I'm very much like hell, even like if we get a mix, I'm very much the kind of like, oh, this is great, this sounds amazing, blah 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 blah, but then I'm like, hold on, and then I send it to somebody else, whether it be I'll send it to the guys, get their thoughts, or I'll send it to somebody or whatever, and they'll point things out, and I'll be like, I never noticed that. That's why I'm not the producer. Because I'm very much like happy with no, I don't want to say happy with anything, but like if I hear a mix, I'm like, oh man, Jack, he's such a good mixer. This mix sounds so good. But then the people point out, oh, there's that thing there and that thing there and that thing there. So that's why it's very much why like I'm not the producer.
It's certainly, as you say, really helpful to be open to that collaboration. But I think that's also a really good attitude to have, especially like when you're young. Like it makes so much sense, as you say, to be like finding mentors, which I kind of feel like a lot of creatives, you know, myself perhaps included, I did have taken that attitude as well. But you know, we might when we're young kind of feel like we know it all. You know what I mean? And like we don't want anybody to kind of tell us how to do it, you know? So I think it's much more positive to have that kind of attitude. I think it's good advice.
Yeah, and it's also kind of it also kind of stems down to the fact that like, even though earlier I was making like the point of like, hey, you know, when you're reaching out to people, you know, don't fanboy or whatever. And while yes, that is still true, I'm still very much like, you know, a lot of these people who I consider friends and colleagues now, there were people who I looked up to before that, you know? So now whenever we have something, I'll always ask like, you know, Bill Hudson, you know, from North Tail, and he's in Doro's band too. He's a friend of mine. I'll ask him his opinion and stuff like that. Because one of the main things I've learned is value the opinion of those who have more experience than you. Because Lindsay is another one. Like Lindsay is another one where like she's very objective about all that stuff. Because one of the other best piece of advice I've had is Bill said this. He always says this. He says this in relation of talking about like haters online, stuff like that, but this could apply to this as well. Where he's like, don't you notice that whenever you get criticized by somebody, and I don't mean like constructively criticized, like just like insulted or like online or whatever. He's like, don't you notice it's always someone who is like not doing as well as you or whatever, you know? And so he's like, so he's like, he always says, value the opinions of those who are higher up than you, because he always told me, he's like, if Luca Turilli or Timo Tolkki thinks my playing is shit, then there's a problem. But if Joe Blow on Facebook comment section thinks my playing sucks, then you know, whatever. And I took that to heart. So that's why I'm very much like thinking of like, whenever we have something, I'll always go to somebody like that, be like, hey, give me your honest thoughts about this. And if there's a time when, you know, they don't have like a completely positive thing to say, that's fine, you know. it's very much a good thing to hear it from someone like that than, then as I said, like then Joe Blow on the internet, because a lot of these more professional guys, they'll give you constructive criticism, and that is what you'll use.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm very much an advocate of like ask people who you like. If there's anybody who's like in a bigger position than you, always ask them for their opinion, because their opinion, they're in that position for a reason, and their opinion is very valuable. So I do agree with you that I think that's a really good attitude that more people should have, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Fantastic advice. I think that's a really good takeaway, man, for a lot of people. That's cool. Yeah, it's definitely great to have that kind of level-headed approach, and I think it's clearly, it works for you, man. You're testament to that. So yeah, really, really cool stuff.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So, you mentioned briefly as well, we were talking about the production. I'm kind of curious now, like, you're the main songwriter. Like, how does the process go from you like having an idea to like writing a song to then getting it to that stage where you'd be producing it?
Well, it's always very different with each song, actually. But usually what happens is I will like be playing around. I'll have like a riff or something. And a lot of times there's certain things I hear in the music I listen to that I want to include in our stuff, like if I see a band do something cool that I think is cool, they'll be like, okay, I'm going to use that in something like similar in one of our songs, and try and sort of build around that. It's usually, from a riff or a vocal melody or whatever, and then write a song around that, and then add different elements that I want to add that, like, if they fit, that's pretty much it. It's like for example, if there's a song, like I've always wanted to have, like, even though we don't have a song yet that this fits in, like I've always wanted to have like hurdy-gurdy on a song of ours.
Nice.
So it'll very, very much like if I write a song and if I hear it, like that kind of thing in my head, I'll make that call and be like, okay, yeah, we're going to have hurdy-gurdy in this song, or stuff like that, like the writing process is very, very different for each song, for sure. Cause it's very much like a combination of whatever riffs that I liked that I was playing, and then whatever music I was listening to at the time, like drawing from that, like different things, like even something as simple as like, I heard a vocalist do this cool technique, I'm going to try that in this song, or something as simple as like, I'm hearing this band playing these really weird chords, but they sound cool, I'm going to try and use them in a song. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm with you, man. Yeah, really cool. So, I'm kind of curious in terms of like how that ends up working practically. Like, obviously, you said you have home recording experience. Are you demoing? Are you using like MIDI instruments as well? Are you playing all the instruments? Like,
oh yeah, like that's always how it is. Like usually with the first stage of demoing for us is that like, well, usually I actually use Guitar Pro first.
Right.
Is I'll write the whole song in Guitar Pro, like not just the guitars, but they let you write like the drums and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I write the whole song in Guitar Pro because I find, like, I know a lot of people don't like Guitar Pro, but like it works for me because it lets me hear the music very objectively. Yeah. Because since Guitar Pro is all MIDI, you can actually hear like what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, everything's clean, basically.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, because like if you record demos in a DAW and you're like slapping amp simulators on it and stuff, then it's hard to get an objective like listen at it, especially when you're hearing a song in your head. And sometimes, and I know we've all been through this, sometimes it's not translating the same way in the recording, and you're like, hey, what the hell, I'm hearing it this way, why does it sound like this? For me, using Guitar Pro gets rid of that, because when I write a song, even if I have a part in my head, I'll write it down and I'll be like, nope, that doesn't work. And then try that. And then usually that's the first step, or like if I want to add a weird instrument, then I'll be like, okay, we'll see if this works in here or not, So that's sort of the first step. And then we go to the actual demoing itself, where we'll play like the actual instruments, and I'll do like the vocal, like a sort of more laid back version of a more laid back version of the vocals, and trying to see what vocal harmonies work, what doesn't, and and then we'll still have some MIDI instruments in there. Like it's kind of hard to demo drums, because drums are like one of the few things you have to go to an actual studio for.
Yeah.
So it's like
you
have the mini
program them.
drums in there, and then pretty much we'll all work on that. And then once we're happy with that, then we'll actually record it for reals.
I see. Yeah. This is really cool, man. Like, so I'm always interested about this because I've spoken to a couple of people that have had this kind of process, like using Guitar Pro or something similar. And that's pretty interesting to me because I've never really done anything like that. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's cool to be able to kind of compose in that way. But then like, so you compose it all in MIDI, and would you say like, are you like playing guitar and you jam around and then you transcribe that riff?
Yes.
Or yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not like, writing everything. Like
clicking
I'm always
everything with a mouse. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll always have like my guitars are like right here, right? So I'll always have
Nice.
I'll always have the guitar in my hand, and I always write the guitar first. I think usually in a song, and then I'll usually use that as the building blocks for everything else usually.
Yeah, make riffs and things, and then
exactly.
And then you can like program the drums in Guitar Pro, like clicking
and it's not like,
and
I try and program them as close as I think our drummer would play it. You know what I mean? Knowing his style. Yeah. I'll always try and and then usually when the Guitar Pro stuff is done, I send it to the guys and I say, hey, what do you here you go. What do you think? And then usually like I give people pretty free reign over stuff like that. So I'm like, hey, this stuff here I wrote, like except for the guitars and the vocals, because that's obviously like what I do.
Yeah, your part. Yeah.
Yeah. But like everything else, I'm like, guys, if you can come up with something better, do it. This is just a starting point. So this is just what I had.
Does everyone use Guitar Pro? Or like is everyone using Guitar Pro and like playing around with the file, or is this literally like
actually, me, our bassist Stu, and our guitarist Andrew use Guitar Pro.
Okay. Cool.
In terms of John, in terms of John, he doesn't because he's not a guitar player. But he, in his case, I usually just send him like the keyboard midis that I write in there, and then I always give him the same direction. I say, hey, this is just a building block. If you can write something better, or even if you like this, but you can add like a different keyboard, like a different sound to it, than what is there.
And he'd send you back like the stems or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's usually just with the stems. Like, so like, for example, like one of the songs that's going to be on the next release, I wrote it originally to be more orchestral. And I had like in the demo, I had like strings and like tuba and stuff like that. Like I wanted it to be, but then I sent it to him. I said, hey, if you can come up with something better, do it. And he replaced all that with like AOR keyboards, and it strangely worked a lot better.
Nice.
So I was like,
cool. Yeah,
perfect.
Yeah, there you go. That's what you want. Again, it's that collaborative spirit. That's cool, man. So, but you're like composer. So you basically just like rack up these instrumental MIDI Guitar Pro demos. And then you kind of go through them to be like, okay, what's a good song? What should we like make a demo in a DAW of?
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. And it's like, because I'm always writing down, whenever I even come up with a riff, I'll always write it down in Guitar Pro. And and then usually in that case, it's very much like I send the song to the guys and I say to them, hey, this is the new song. Learn it and change whatever you think could be changed, and
that's from
in terms of like thing. Their instrument, like the guitars and vocals, again, since they're on my end, I'm the ones that usually has the final say on stuff like that. But everything else, like the bass, the drums, the keyboards, and even with our other guitar player Andrew, his solos, I'm very I always leave the solo part blank. Because I'm like, here, you write your own, slate. Obviously.
Yeah. That's cool. So, okay, so basically everyone learns their parts they learn the song from the MIDI demo. And
exactly.
And then we'll track their part to send to you, and then you'll kind of start putting it into, I guess you're like bouncing the MIDI from the demo for like the drums and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Okay. And then, all right, you all piece it together into a demo. That's a cool process. But then do you end up recording everything again
from that demo, or does that demo kind of turn into the final song?
Depends.
Mhm.
So yes, we'll start off recording everything again for real, because the demos are mainly there to be like, okay, to experiment. Like, okay, this works, this doesn't, blah blah. But then when we go to record for realsies, there are times where, like, for example, I'll go to record the vocals and I don't know what's going on, but the vocals in the demo sound better. So I'll sometimes just end up just using those, you know, or even just parts, you know, like if there's like a certain part where in the demo it sounds better than I'm doing it now, then I'll just use that, you know,
little backing vocal and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very much like the demos. We will draw from the demos if it's necessary. Like if, as I said, like if a part in the demo sounds better than, for some reason, you know how recording is, you know, it's like some days it's, you know, some days you're like, man, what the hell? I did this like a month ago. Why can't I do it right now? You know, when you're recording, you forget how to play your instrument. It's, you know, so usually, so it's very much like a sort of we record everything again, but and we try and do it the best we can. But if the demos sound, if parts in the demo sound better, then we'll end up just using those as well. So, sort of a mixture, pretty much.
Nice. Yeah. And, I mean, you mentioned like, so do you have like program drums for the demo, and then you get does your drummer then record live drum parts, or do you just,
Yeah. Well, see, that's been a really weird thing with us, because, not to get into this too much, because this has nothing to do with music, but our current drummer, during the pandemic is a bit hard, because he's from Greece originally, but he lives here. Well, he lived here, but you know, because of like border issues and immigration issues and stuff like that, he was in Greece for the whole pandemic, and I think he still is, actually. So pretty much with this process was, he actually has, since he's from there originally, his friend has a recording studio there. Right, so I send them the tracks, like his friend, and then his friend sets up the session for the drums and sends me the drum tracks and all that stuff, you know.
Wow, you guys really are an international band now then.
Yeah. Well, but that's more of like an unfortunate situation, just because he did live, like we played gigs together, like he did live here. It's just very much a COVID / immigration problem.
Yeah, fair dues. I'm sure that's been a headache. What about your guitars? Like, are you recording like through amps at home, through amp sims, or are you getting like jack to reamp stuff? What's the deal there?
Very much digital. Like we record all the guitars right into the DAW, like DI, and then, you know, kind of go with amp simulators or reamping and stuff like that, just because it's funny, because I know a lot of people nowadays, like people love to criticize like the modern way of recording stuff, but I'm thinking like, but it's such a funny situation to me, because it's like, yeah, you criticize it, but like all the bands you listen to do it though, you know, like everybody now is like, oh, why don't people use real amps anymore and stuff like that. I'm like, well, because a lot of these amp simulators and stuff like that just have a much cleaner sound. Like if you go see almost any band live now, they don't even have amps on stage anymore, you know? Yeah, it's very much just because digital amps just sound so much nicer to the human ear.
You don't have to carry them either.
Yeah, you don't have to carry them, and they also have like since they're digital, they've already cut out all the undesirable frequencies, you know, that a regular amp would have. Now, if you're a band that has a certain sound, like if you're like a trad metal band that you're trying to sound like a 70s band, like if you're trying to sound like Uriah Heep or something, you know, or you're a stoner metal band and you really want like that raw sound. If you're a black metal band, I get it if you're using like the actual amps and stuff, for sure. And but I feel like for genres like power metal, everyone does the same thing. It's very much, you know, you have to try and get the most clean sound you can, and that's the way to do it. And you know, everyone loves to make fun of like, oh, it's overproduced. I'm just like, yeah, but like that's everything nowadays, on like for better or for worse, you know.
Exactly. Again, yeah, as you say, it's a hard line because like it's all well and good being like, oh, you don't want to sound the same as everything else, but then you don't want to sound worse either.
Yeah. Like it's sort of it's a fine line because everybody now, you know, it's like, oh, like, you know, people always praise bands like, obviously, and rightfully so, like obviously bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, but all their modern records all sound like that, you know.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
they're very much like it's about evolving with the times, you know.
For sure. Yeah.
Like I remember, like, there's like a band, there's some people that I know who like, they're like, you're like, oh man, whatever happened to like recording to tape, you know, and the old school sound and shit like that. And I'm just thinking, well, honestly, and to be brutally honest, that's just kind of pointless now. That's just all this extra work for what, you know? And besides, there are plugins now that will give you the tape sound if you really want it that much, you know?
It's like the digital analog sound.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like recording to something like tape now, honestly, is just a huge waste of money and time because
it's like a hobbyist approach. Like if you want to do that for fun or whatever, like you get some sort of pleasure out of that experience, cool, but it's not practical.
Exactly. It's very much like, and also it's one of those things where, because I know there are bands, there was one band that I know around here who they did do that. They recorded to tape, and because they were very much like one of those like new wave of traditional metal bands who they really wanted. They're like sort of a mixture between that and like doom metal. So they really wanted that sort of like Candlemassy kind of old, like first few albums, Candlemassy kind of sound.
I love that stuff.
But in reality, yes, they recorded to tape, but they ran the whole thing through a DAW though, because so it's just like, and they mixed it in a DAW too. And so I'm just like, well, then, you know, what was the point of that?
Yeah. That's it. I know that for sure. I've seen where the producers that debate this, it's normally ends up being either digital or hybrid at best, you know? Because it ends up being digital at some point. Like, it's just, You've obviously touched on it a bit, but like, you know, what's next for the band? You've kind of mentioned a release that you've got coming up. What's next for the band? What's next for you and other things that you're doing? Yeah, all that stuff.
Well, yeah. So in terms of all that, we're recording a new release. It's going to be out this year. It's not going to be an album, but it's going to be more of an EP probably. And then we're going to, pretty much the plan for this year is to really get into stuff like touring and stuff like that and get back into playing live more, because this past year we only played live once. And it was at it was a good show. It was at a festival, actually. Nice. It was at it wasn't even in our hometown. It was at a power metal festival over in Vancouver called Hyperspace.
Wow,
and that
Vancouver,
was a really, really amazing experience playing. That was our very first festival we've ever played on. So what's next for us this year is it's a new release. We're going to start recording album number 2. We're going to be focusing a lot on touring. We got booked on a US festival. So it'll be our first time playing in the States. Cool. We got booked on a US festival called Blades of Steel, where we're playing the headliners. It's like Flotsam and Jetsam and Riot and some of the old school US band, melodic US bands like that. We're going to be doing like a tour around that. We're going to be doing some more States stuff. We have to get visas, right? So we have to plan as much as we can to do as much as we can in terms of playing live this year.
Nice.
And in terms of the band, there's that. We're going to focus on putting out more content. Like that's sort of like my New Year's resolution for myself is to put out more content, because it's one of those things where I want to, but it's like one of those things where I'm trying to figure out how to go about it. So we're going to try and do a video of some sort for every single song on the next release. Do lots of different things with try and explore different avenues like Twitch and Discord and all this other stuff. And in terms of just me personally, same thing. It's just putting out more content. I'm going to be putting out, just doing more vocal covers, more collaborative stuff. You know, I'm just doing as much as we can to get our names out there in every conceivable way we can. I'm gonna start doing the Wolfpack Live again soon.
Awesome.
I just took a break from it for a while because I find doing a show like that, despite the fact that it's fun, it does get tiring when you do it all the time because it's like you're talking to it's also like people's schedules, stuff like that. So, so yeah, just overall, it's just we're going to try and focus this year more on touring and putting out content, putting out the new release, recording the album number 2, and trying to reach as many new people as we can.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. Really cool. I'm really positive that it's going to be a great year for you guys.
Yeah, thanks, man. I really think so too.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think that you've done a great job with it, and I think that there is, you've got a bit of a buzz going for sure, and I've seen you popping up here, there, and everywhere for a while. So yeah, I think you've done really good work. I think you've built a fantastic foundation. Like it feels like
Thanks,
it's
man.
ready to.
And I'm really excited for people to hear the new release because it's very different from Mark of the Wolf. Actually, like it still sounds like us, but it still sounds like Lycanthro, but it's very much like adding a lot of new elements to it.
Like, it's like all keyboards, like all the way through, like John playing on all the songs and stuff.
Yeah, it's very much like power metal with AOR keyboards and all this other stuff, and it's great. We got I can't say who, but we got 2 really good guests for it.
Awesome.
And you'll hear it here first, folks. I'll give you a hint for one of them though. Cool. One of the guests that we're having on the next release was on Woods of Wonder.
Oh, well, that's cool. You've got like a 1 in a million chance of getting them then, or
because all the people that are on that album,
about 30 odds. Yeah, so there's a lot of them. Yeah,
it was one of the people who was on Woods of Wonder when. So we're very excited for that. So
nice. That's cool.
Yeah. So other than that, we're just doing that, and again, like trying to be able to not only just reach out and develop a bigger fan base, but also just be able to do what we always do and sort of develop as good a relationship we can with different people, whether it be industry people or other bands or people we look up to, and this and that. So just just doing the grind this year.
Wicked. Oh, I'm excited to be with you on that journey, man, and following you along. I'm really looking forward. Do you have an indicator as to when that release might be out, or is that something?
We're aiming for fall. We're aiming for fall for it to be out. So right, we're because Blades of Steel, the festival that we're on in the States, is end of September. So we want to try and release it around the same time as we're on tour. So I figured that'd be a good time. So
sounds good. And in terms of like maybe quickly you could touch on some of these other projects that you're working on. I know we exchanged a couple of messages about like you've been doing like some sort of composing work as well.
Yes. Well, that is mainly because obviously, people always love to joke about how like, musicians don't make any money and stuff like that nowadays. People always like to make jokes about that. Yeah. But it's one of the things where like I really thought that like I've really recently had to think about, okay, like what am I going to do to make actual like decent money while doing this? Yeah. And one of the things my best friend from high school, he works in Toronto in film, actually, because that's how because me and him became friends, because we were both, the chasing the dreams, where me and him, he's like, I want to be a filmmaker, I want to be a musician,
Nice, cool.
And
man.
he's working in Toronto now, in film, big stuff too. Wow, and cool. He was telling me he's been trying to encourage all of us to do film with him. He says, guys, this is the best job to have if you're a creative, because film, there's so much budget for everything nowadays. TV shows are like hundreds of millions of dollars in like budget wise, Yeah, so he said, like if you're a creative in this field, you'll make money. It takes a while, but you will. And so I thought, well, I can do composing for film. So like that's one of the things I literally went to school for. Yeah, so I've been looking down the career avenue of doing music for film, and I've already gotten like I've already gotten a couple of gigs doing that, which has been great. And like I'm doing the music for there's an upstart animation studio here in Ottawa. They're called Bards on the Margins, and it's very much like they have a really like unique business model that I've never heard of anywhere having, but I thought it was cool. Was they were in the process of making an animated web series, sort of like an anime style thing.
Yeah.
And it's based off a D&D campaign that the main producer and his son wrote.
Nice.
So we're making a series based on that. It's like your typical like high fantasy sort of anime style thing. And I got hired to do the music for that, which has been really fun.
That's so cool.
I also I can't divulge too much about it, but like I got hired to be on a film recently because of my friend. Thankfully, because of my friend, his connections, I got hired to do music for an actual like full length movie now, which is really great. So it's pretty much it's pretty much a career option I've been exploring to make it like my actual like main means of income.
Yeah. That's awesome. Like, are you a fan of soundtracks?
Yeah, like more or less like more or less like not just like movies, but like video gamey stuff too. Like I love anything that oh crap, I forgot his name now. The guy who did all the Final Fantasy music.
Yeah. I know.
You know what I'm talking about. I forgot his name now though.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not gonna try and butcher it off the top of my head either, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, no, like stuff like that, and you know, like Hans Zimmer and stuff like that. You know, the typical stuff.
Of course,
but also like for me, my approach, it's very much like whatever the director or the producer or the boss, whatever they want.
Yeah.
Usually just adapt. You know, like for example, the film that I'm on, like they wanted much more like a synth wave. They want more like a synth wavy kind of thing. So I've been like trying to listen to a lot of like the Midnight and Perturbator and stuff like that, just to get more of an idea of that kind of thing. So
when you sit down to like score something like that, are you hitting up Guitar Pro again as your first point of call?
Not for this actually. For this, I mainly just usually what I do is that in my DAW, I have a big, you know, library of different sounds, everything from orchestral to synthwave and stuff like that. And usually I just kind of figure out like what they want, like whatever they're describing to me, whether it be the director, producer, whoever, and just whatever comes to mind, I just put down. And then usually how it goes is that, you know, it's usually like the way I view this is that when it comes to like Lycanthro, it's very much, since that's like the passion project, that's very much, you know, I'm very hypercritical of stuff like that, you know, as we all are. But when it comes to like the film thing, it's very much like whenever they're happy, you know, it's very much like, hey, I'm going to write a few things. I'm not going to think about it too much. And then if they like it, then we'll use it. If not, I'll make the changes that they like. You know, it's very much like it's very much a still creative, but very much in the sense of like I'm writing to what they want, not what I want. You know?
Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, this is very much more like the job side of it, like getting a job with music and
exactly. Because I figured that like
job.
And that's what I'm trying to explore as a career, because as I said, the one thing that I've heard a lot of people online say, and it's true, is that, you know, you're in a band and you put out albums and you tour and you do all this stuff because you love to do it. You know, that's been it's your dream, right? It's mine for sure. But if you want to actually go into music to make money, go into film. That's the only place now where you can make money doing music. Like, to be brutally honest, you know, like, if you want to make actually money to make a living, then you have to go into film. Whether that be scoring or sound editing or anything like that, it's all in film, because unfortunately, like as we were talking about earlier, when it comes to music, a lot of the bigger bands don't even make that much money anymore. But in film, all these, even a small indie film will have like a couple like we'll have like a $50,000 budget or 60 or $100,000 budget, you know?
Yeah, things that don't exist in the record music world anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Those numbers don't even exist in the record industry anymore.
And that's like the
unless your name is Metallica, but
yeah, well then you can do what you want. But yeah,
exactly. But it's pretty much where like if you want to be able to have a career doing music and actually making a living doing it, then it's all in film. So
yeah.
I'm trying to do my best to be able to get in on that.
That's cool. Yeah, and it sounds great. Like again, it's a friendly connection. You know, a good friend of yours, and the relationship that you've maintained that has opened that door.
Well,
so again,
I always joke because I always used to joke about him saying you owe me because I got him his first film job.
Oh, cool.
Because there was a local filmmaker here in Ottawa. His name's Brett Kelly, and the reason I mentioned his name, it's because he lives down the road from me, and he's very infamous because he's known for directing the film that for a short while on IMDb dethroned The Room as the worst film ever made.
Oh my God.
Have you ever heard of Jurassic Shark?
I feel like I can picture what's going on here.
Yeah. So
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, the director of Jurassic Shark lives about 5 minutes from me. And but here's the thing, though, like contrary to what people like to say, you know, about like, oh, yeah, it's terrible films, you know, blah, blah, blah. They're still very knowledgeable and very talented because those kinds of one thing that he explained to me once, he's like, there's a market for people who want to see just get drunk and watch shitty films. There's
a big market for it, I think, man.
Yeah, he was telling me like he has a wife and 2 kids and he's been able to support them on just that, you know, of making these really cheesy ass freaking movies. You know,
that's fun, right? That's pretty fun to just come out with wacky ideas, you know.
Yeah, and he's very knowledgeable. Like he knows like as much as people like to criticize film, like he knows what he's doing. You know, a lot of these people
how to make a good film. Yeah,
exactly. And like a lot of the stuff that people perceive as bad, they're intentional. They're meant to be there to get 100%. A rise out of people. You know,
that's it. Like as they say, there's no like such a thing as bad publicity. It's like, you know, if you're somewhere in the middle where nobody cares, it's indifferent. That's the worst. Yeah, but if you make a really good movie or a really terrible one, you're in.
Yeah, exactly. and the thing with film is that my friend who I got him his first film job was because this director Brett, he used to me and my family, again, it unfortunately closed because of the pandemic, but me and my family used to run a rehearsal studio here in Ottawa. All the local bands used to come and rehearse at our place.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. And this guy, Brett, he had a hair metal tribute band.
Oh yeah.
They used to come and rehearse there too.
Like Steel Panther style.
Yeah. And me and him bonded because I love hair metal, you know, so me and him bonded over a lot of that stuff. And he told me he was a filmmaker, and I got my friend his first job doing film with him. So I always used to joke with him saying, yeah, you owe me, man. Me. And then eventually the other day, I was at my old job, and I literally get a call in the middle of my shift, and I deny it. I said, sorry, man, I'm at work. I can't talk right now. And he goes, no, bro, it's urgent. Call me right now. Like, this is important. And I'm like, all right. And then I go, he goes, I got you a job doing music. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah. Wow. And I'm like, shit.
Wow. That's so cool, man.
He finally returned the favor.
That's so cool. Are you going to be doing that all like remote from home, or do you go into a studio, or?
Well, the music, yes, we'll be doing it remotely from home. But from what my friend told me with how, because again, he works on a lot of these like big budget stuff now. Like he's in like the union, and he got into like he's working on like these different shows for like Netflix and Amazon Prime now, which is nuts. Yeah. And he pretty much told me, he pretty much said it's like, yeah, it's mostly remote, but he goes, hey, like at some point he might ask you to come to Toronto for something, you know, or whatever, whether to be on the set for whatever reason or for, you know, for something. So he might ask you to come and be on the set for whatever reason, which I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with that, you know?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, you just get to hang out and be like, yeah, I'm the music guy.
Yeah. It's pretty much like, I think maybe it'll be like, just because he like might want to like see how like the scenes are shot, because it might give you a better idea of what the music will be in each scene or whatever. So
That's cool, man.
Yeah,
How
so
long do you anticipate working on a project like that? Like to score that film? How long?
Probably
do you reckon?
gonna be like, well, the music or the film, the whole film itself.
In terms of your part, like in terms of the workload that you're gonna have to do to
I think
put that
maybe like
together.
3 or 4 months. I think.
Cool.
So because he wants stuff in chunks, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
give me like, yeah, I want this part of the film scored, and then this part, and then this part. So it's very much
Okay.
working in like, I think it's very much working in like anywhere between 5 to like, yeah, it's like working in like more like 5-minute chunks almost because
Yeah.
because obviously we've all seen
scenes.
movies. The whole movie isn't scored, right? So.
Yeah.
It's very much like, okay, I need a score for this part of the film, and then I need one for this part of the film, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Because a lot of it is like ambience and sound
Yeah.
design and things like that. Is that somebody else's job?
No.
Stuff, or-
Well, but the sound design, yes. Sound design,
Mhm.
yes. But like in terms of like the actual musical side of things, it's all me. So it's
That's
like
cool,
even
man.
like some like even if there's a scene and there's like wants some ambience in it, I would do that too. So
Cool.
even if it's something simple as like, like one keyboard note really low underneath the characters talking dialogue, it's
Mhm.
just stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I remember speaking to Nathan from Blood of Indigo, those
Oh
guys,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And he's told me that he scored a film once, but he literally he had to do all of the sound for the entire movie. And so he had to do there was a typewriter and he had to have the sample of the typewriter and he had to align that and everything.
Oh
And he said
yeah. Well,
it was
I've done
very
that too.
meticulous.
I've done that too. Because when I was in recording school, one of the
For
classes
school.
was audio for video, and we had to do that
Yeah,
before. It's
yeah,
very
yeah.
much like we have to and with that kind of thing, you got to get creative. Like for example, if you have you have to put your microphone up to your keyboard and then just start typing randomly. And then the thing that the level of precision that I remember we had to do is there was a scene where in this little mock scene that we did in school where a character's typing on a computer. And what I had to do was in the DAW, I had to go frame by frame. And every time you see his one of his fingers, he's in a film, they're doing that, right? They're
Yeah,
just
of course,
pretending to type, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's like the hacker in like a heist movie, it's like but we had to slow it down, the footage down, and every single time his finger hit the
No.
keyboard, you had to put a sound there. And then at the end, it sounds like he's going, he's like typing really, really
Yeah.
fast. When
It's
in
all just some
reality-
random noise, but yeah, it took so much more than that.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that sounds meticulous. Yeah. No, much better to do what you're doing and just get to do the music.
Yeah,
really
exactly.
cool, man.
Like I expect at some point I'll have to do sound design too, which I'm more than happy to do. I thought it was really fun when I did it. So
Yeah, that's cool, man. Cool. Well, yeah. Best of luck with that, man. I would love to hear your the results of that, man. I bet it'll be really cool.
yeah, for sure, man. I'm really excited to explore this new career path for sure.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, dude, we've been talking for a good while now, man. I think that is there anything else in particular that you'd like to get in there?
For everybody who's watching, go follow us on all of our social medias, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. Follow this fine gentleman and love Anarchy Records and all that stuff. And thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. It was fun to finally have a long form chat with you after a while. And I
Yeah,
appreciate the opportunity. And yeah,
Cool. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you.
awesome. Thank you, man. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and stay metal, my friends.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Creating a Universe. Special thanks to James for joining me. I really enjoyed this chat. Be sure to check out James and Lycanthro at linktr.ee/Lycanthro1. Links will be in the show notes. That's all for this one. I'll see you next time.